Hey there, welcome to Ask Amy. Today is December 17th, which happens to be my Willow's birthday, but it's also the last Monday before we have a couple Mondays of holidays. So I just wanted to mention that the next couple weeks I'll be taking a short hiatus from new Ask Amy's. I'll be playing some reruns, but please send your questions to AskAmy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com because starting January 7th, I think it is, I'll be back just like everyone else. You'll be back too. I'll be back here answering your questions. So keep them coming, and just know for the next couple weeks, I'll be celebrating the holidays, as I hope you will as well. So today I have a question from Suzanne, and it's a question that, again, I know I say this often, but most questions this is true of. That's why I say it often. I love when these questions go so much bigger than the question. You know, it's like I can read where someone's struggling or caught up or just what they're asking about and see, oh, this backs into something huge that's helpful for so many of us. So I love where Suzanne's question kind of backs us up to. So Suzanne says, when I lost my 19-year-old daughter to an accident, I was inhabited by a huge heaviness that, from my perspective, had nothing to do with my thinking. I had lost part of my being and felt deep longing in my being for years. I don't know how I could have dismissed that event as being an outside event, which in theory should not have contaminated my inner peace. Now I can see it as an unbelievable growth opportunity. I mean, if you can survive the death of a child, you're pretty resilient for any other challenges life has for you. But at the time, I was pretty zombie-like with few, if any, thoughts, just longing and grief. So, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss, Suzanne. And I love, like, the way that you put this question. I don't know. I just personally feel so like in awe of that, you know, that it's like, wow, here's a person, I mean, you are the picture of resilience, as you say, because here's a person who, yes, lost a child, the worst thing, in my opinion, any of us can probably ever go through. And look at you, you know, and really being curious and like, wait a minute. And I know, Suzanne, because we've had a little bit of back and forth, that you've seen so much in this understanding, and it's just amazing to me, and I see this in so many of you out there who say, man, I'm really struggling, or this was horrible, obviously, or I'm in this depression, or I'm in this experience, or I'm in this grief, and yet something in what you're sharing over here feels true. Like just our ability to be able to hold both, to be so human in the best and worst possible ways, the easiest and hardest ways that we're human, to really be in that, and at the same time say, yeah, there's something that feels right, and just wanting to, just being curious, honestly curious, and wanting to kind of reconcile that. So I don't know, I just think so highly of that. It's really admirable, Suzanne, when I read your question. That's like, oh my gosh, this is gigantic, and look at how resilient she is, because look at that natural curiosity coming up and just wanting to see more. So, so you say when you lost your daughter, this heaviness had nothing to do with your thinking. I lost part of my being and felt deep longing in my being for years. So the first thing I just kind of want to point out for all of us is how thought, the way, so there's thinking, right? There's like, what time is it? And I like this, and it's December 17th, and there's all this thinking, and about much bigger things too. There's this little kind of cognitive storyline that we often call thinking. And then there's something that we kind of look at here in this direction I point people toward, that we sometimes call thought. And you know, there is a distinction, I think, but it's not one. Don't really want to waste our time getting into definitions and distinctions that much, but thought, let's just look at thought. It's not cognitive. Thought is not cognitive. Thought is the ability for us to have an experience. So you, Suzanne, then and now and every moment of your life have had experience. And that experience, good, bad, grief, joy, any of it, has come via this energy, this gift of thought. And so again, by thought, I'm not talking about what we're thinking, anything cognitive at all. It has nothing to do with that. It is how a human being experiences anything, how we come to experience every single thing we experience. So it's not what we're experiencing, but it's that experience is coming to life. That is due to this amazing energy and power of thought. So when you say again that when you were in just the depths of despair and grief, this your feelings, this heaviness that you had nothing to do with your thinking, absolutely, that's right. Like that's going to be your experience, no question. I am no one I know is ever suggesting, oh, that's because you're sitting around thinking, you know, that this shouldn't have happened, or you're thinking this, or you're thinking that, and that's where your grief came from. It isn't really at that level. It isn't thinking in that cognitive way. It's that all feeling, all experience comes through this energy of thought. So kind of just sit with that distinction a little bit. So so then you say, I don't, and I love this because it's so honest, and I just think this is going to be so helpful. I don't know how I could have dismissed that event as being an outside event, which in theory should not have contaminated my inner peace. You couldn't have. You shouldn't have. That's not at all. It's how everyone hears it, me too, in the beginning. So I'm not, you know, it's a really great question, Suzanne, or a statement there. It's a really normal, natural way that we hear this. But see, never, ever, ever, in just looking at a description of how we work and where our experience comes from, are we ever saying that we should anything? So we should, there is no should here, but really are we ever saying that we should be able to dismiss some outside event or say, oh, this outside event can't contaminate my peace? No. We are human beings. Shit contaminates our inner peace. That is just the way it works when you're a human being, okay? It is always going to look like stuff out there is contaminating our inner peace. Our inner peace is not, I mean, it's who we are beneath our experience. But again, we aren't just that. We also are human beings. We have an experience that's always coming up, always coming to life, always moving and shaking and twisting and turning and doing all this stuff. So we don't, even though we are inner peace by nature beneath our experience, we don't sit in inner peace, and no way in the world are we ever suggesting that something out there should not contaminate, like, you know, that when life happens in a huge way, like what you're talking about here, that we should stay in some state, that it shouldn't contaminate it. Now, what we're really looking at, though, is simply where our experience of life comes from. And it comes from, again, not your personal cognitive thinking. Your psychology didn't lead. Your personal thinking and narrative and stories are not why you grieved when your daughter died. Okay? It's so much bigger than that. We're looking at the fact that thought brings experience to life. It's just an energy, it's just a power, just, you know, it's gigantic, but it brings experience to life through us. So never, ever would we say that this shouldn't have done that or that shouldn't have done this. Again, we're kind of setting all that aside and really looking like a level deeper. So when you talk about this heaviness and this longing and all of that, I mean, I think, again, anybody listening to this can feel for you and feel, and we've felt version of in our own way, and it's not us doing it, and it's not coming from our cognition. Like, it's not coming from cognitive thought necessarily that we're thinking up. It's not like, oh, I'm thinking this, therefore I'm feeling this way. It's so much bigger than that. But the thing, like where we're kind of looking here, and the thing I would just kind of consider is, for me, what feels helpful is to see that it is a psychological experience. Again, I cannot say it enough, that it's not like you should have this one instead of that one. No way. That's just what our human mind, what our ego will kind of think about it. it's never a should this versus that or any of that, or it shouldn't be this way or it should be that way. But just to see that it is a psychological experience. And of course, it feels super deep and like you, because you and me and all of us, we are a psychological experience as well. Who we think we are in our lives and our personal identity is a psychological experience. So the thing that came up for me in reading this was, you know, it's not that you were sitting around thinking the wrong things and that's why, you know, you suffered. And it's not that you should have somehow, this outside event, you know, should have somehow not led to suffering, not at all. But to almost, I don't know why this thought popped in my head reading this, but it's like, okay, but when you felt this deep longing, this heaviness for a long time, of course, and that's a common experience, but what if you had been unconscious? Like not asleep, because I'm sure you probably dreamt about all of this and we feel emotions in our sleep also. But I don't know, what if you had to go under for an operation or you were unconscious at some period? Would that heaviness and longing be there? And again, I'm just looking in the framework of this little question, but we can ask it for anything. We all have stuff that feels so deep and fundamental and no, this is who I am and goes right to my soul and my essence and all of that. And it's just a curious question. Okay, but when you're unconscious, meaning you aren't having this conscious thought-created experience of something, then do you feel it? I don't know, as far as I know, when we're unconscious, we don't feel anything. We're not conscious of anything, you know? So all that does for me, and the only reason I bring it up again is what that does is kind of shine this light on, oh, it's a psychological experience. Should we have a different one? No. Should we not? Should we rise above all psychological experience? Not as long as you're human. But can we see that what we feel, especially when it feels like separation and suffering and us and them and identities and all of that, can we see that that's a psychological experience? Yeah. And is it helpful? Yeah. Does it mean we don't suffer? No, I don't think so. Does it mean we don't grieve? No. But can it make life a little easier and lighter? Absolutely. And that's a different place. Like, that's a different kind of place, you know, than, oh, this thing happened and it shouldn't have contaminated my peace. So I hope that little piece makes some sense. And again, the big thing in this that I just want to share is that when we talk about thought, like, of course, it doesn't feel like, you know, you said you were zombie-like with few, if any, thoughts. Yeah, because we aren't really talking about thoughts, like specific storylines that we feel. There's that, but it's so much bigger than that. We can be zombie-like with few, if any, thoughts, absolutely, and you're still feeling life in huge ways, you know, because it's an energy, it's a power that just brings experience to life. And again, I think that's helpful because it backs us off of the specifics. It's not in there in the content, and I felt this and I wanted more of that and any of that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, I'm a human and this is what I'm feeling, and it's brought through thought. And it's not that it ever should be any different or we should be able to avoid it or get away from it necessarily. It's more seeing how it works and how it comes up, is brought to life and moves on its own. And that in itself, just that understanding of that description and how it works can bring peace. It can bring so much lightness and less locked inness to whatever we happen to be experiencing in that moment. So thank you, Suzanne, for sending this question, for showing your resilience, because yeah, you are resilient. And I love, again, just so admire your curiosity about this, when it would be easy, and it is for all of us at times, to say, well, this sucked and, you know, it shouldn't have happened, and I don't like your theory, and, you know, whatever. But I mean, just to feel into that resilience, to see what you've seen, like, man, I can get through that. I can get through anything, and still want to see more about how life works is really awesome, really admirable. So thank you for sending your question. Thank you guys all for sending questions. I have some amazing questions on deck for 2019, and if you have a question yourself, please send it, because I can never have too many. I love looking through them and thinking about, you know, what the questioner really needs to hear, what I can kind of hear behind their words, but also like how it can open up a bigger discussion and give so many other people insights, even when that's not their question, which is which says a lot about how all alike we really are. So thanks so much for being here, for sending your questions. Happy holidays, happy new year, and see you in a couple weeks.